Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the next session of the PPM Summit. And we have a very exciting speaker for this session. She has already presented a couple of times in the past PPM Summits. Let me present to you Kelly Keene. She's an architect who transitioned into R&D construction management. She founded kellykeene.com in 2020 in response to clients needing consulting for project, program, and portfolio setups. Over her career, she worked with Genentech, Roche, Novartis, Boehringer Ingelheim, Excelsis, Polpharma Biologics, as well as many high-tech companies in the San Francisco Bay Area. She served on the ISPE, International Society of Pharmaceutical Engineers, Board of Directors from 2017 to 2019, and remains a member of EU Leadership Team and Pharma 4.0 Advisory Board. And Kelly will talk about new ways of working with portfolio management. And with this, I give you the stage. Kelly, warm welcome.
Thank you, Mithan, and thank you everyone for attending this morning. Can everybody hear me okay? Is it working audio and my screen is up? Looks like it's good. Wonderful. So what I'm going to talk today here, this is a presentation a little bit different from the PowerPoint, and so I'm going to move through these different sections. And hopefully this works. A little bit about me. I love cultures, I love traveling, and I love traveling with a purpose. So most of the places that I've visited in this world have been because I've been working in a different location. So I moved to Versailles, France to go to the School of the Palace of Versailles for architecture. And from there, I went back to the United States, but eventually ended up in Singapore, setting up Genentech's first Asia manufacturing operations for an E. coli plant in Singapore. I also have worked for Roche in sub-Saharan Africa, setting up cold chain, also too designing a mobile cervical cancer screening center for women in Tanzania, and serving on a board of directors for a HIV orphanage in Africa, Ethiopia area. My job has taken me a lot of places in the world. Also, too, I have a passion for motivating people to do things that they don't necessarily like to do, and that's where the fitness instruction for over 30 years comes into play. As Mithan said, I am now working in project and portfolio management and served with ISPE now for 30 years as well. My career path, I'm not going to go through all this again, but to start at the bottom, I did start my career as an architect in research and development. And so my job was to meet with scientists and translate their science needs into an actual physical building. And from there, I was able to work with the scientists in understanding what their work was. And one of the things that's very unique with architects is they have to always think about the user experience. And so when you think about software architecture, it's the same thing, is that you never want one of your users to get lost within the software application. And so you're constantly trying to think about how is the user going to experience this space. And with these different artificial intelligence databases that the companies are bringing into play, I always want you to think about that it's always a design space and thinking about the user and how they are going to use this information and data. I was also the first generation of architects to work on the computer. So I started my career working on the drawing board. And so at the time that I was becoming an architect, AutoCAD was just coming into play. And I actually learned AutoCAD version 2 in 1987 when I was still in high school through a vocational school that was near my high school. But through my career, I moved into the project management and portfolio management side, got some experience on the clinical trial side. And so now I'm working with many companies, mostly with the tech transfers, CapEx, CMC continuum realm of their projects. When I started my company last year, I also went back to school at MIT and got a certificate for AI and business strategy and digital transformations. And at the same time, I was doing some coursework at INSID in design thinking and creativity and business and agile iterations. The main thing with design thinking is that I was already doing that being an architect by design. So I was already thinking about these user experiences. And so a lot of the things that you've heard over the past few days incorporate the agile way of delivering projects as well. And this started in the software industry, but now it's being used in almost every industry out there. And so look, computers are here to supplement our lives. They're not here to take over our jobs. They're not here to really form some sort of dystopian society in the future. they are here to really help us do our jobs better. And that's the one thing that people are a little bit afraid of as they see these different AIs coming into the workplace. And a few things that I just want to talk about with AI, artificial intelligence, this can drastically reduce the time taken to get our products to the patients. There's a company called Sophia Genetics out of the Geneva area in Switzerland, and they are using the genome and some clinical data, and they are able to find patients who these products might work for much faster, and they're going to decrease the time that clinical trials need to take so that these products can actually get to patients in a much more timely fashion. And we're already seeing that with COVID and how fast they were able to get some of these medications to the market. And so AI is really here to help our lives and make them easier. And one of the things that we talked about last year when we had this conference in Basel right before the shutdown is that we don't need to fear artificial intelligence, but rather the lack of natural intelligence. I really like that quote. Virtual reality is something that's already used in the CapEx projects. We are actually doing 3 and 4D and even 5D models and letting the users actually walk in their spaces before they're even built. And this is really great for the construction industry because, of course, a lot of the cost in construction comes at the end of the project when people are actually able to see their space, and then that's when they want to make changes. And ultimately, it's the most expensive time to make a change. And so being able to let the users see it prior to construction is helping them understand and make sure that their working space is going to be complete. They're also using this a lot in training, especially in clean rooms, high potency areas, fill lines, and sensitive areas. So this is something that is already happening. Of course, these headsets like you're seeing on the screen, this is going to be like the 1980s cell phones when we used to see that. It's just going to be probably a set of glasses in the future, and you're going to be able to see a space as it will be in the future. However, augmented reality is already in use, and people can do this with their cell phones. They can do it with their iPads. This is taking a space that's either in a manufacturing area or anywhere within your corporation, and you can actually see how things will work with the actual new technology or the new equipment overlaid on it. And so augmented reality is definitely something too that can be used in training and all these other areas as well. In the design and construction realm, we even have this thing called VDC, Virtual Design and Construction. And so the main thing here is using one set of information. And in the past, when you have architects and contractors and all the different subcontractors, everybody had their own set of drawings. And before the computers, we would sit down at a light table and we'd overlay all these drawings to find out where the clashes are. But now everybody's working in one computer model. Every single element within that model has a cost implication, it has a schedule implication, it even has a specification from the user specification information built right into it. And they take the human error out of it, even on the job site where they have a robot, a Roomba-looking robot that actually does all the layout. And so there's little room for human error, and it's making construction a lot more efficient for the companies that are using this. But the thing is that this really needs to come from the owner side in order to use this new technology, because it is expensive. But if you look at the long-term cost of it, in the long run, it will make your projects a lot more efficient and a lot less expensive. We're also going to begin to see differences in how the patients and the doctors are going to be dealing with the technology. And this is a short video from Dow Corning, and it's an architectural glass company. And it's just going to show you a little bit about how in the future, whoops, sorry, I think I guess I have to play this. In the future, the hospitals and being able to work remotely and having a doctor on one side of the world treating you and coordinating with doctors on the same side of the world where you might be physically. This technology is available, it's just expensive, it's just not in the mainstream yet. Finding the companies to really invest in it and utilize it. Microbial, you're actually going to see this with coronavirus coming into everything from public transportation to ordering your food at McDonald's. Everything is probably going to be very similar to what's being used in these operating rooms. Anyways, we don't need to see this whole video. I know the press for time. You can really see how the computers are starting to interact not only with the patients and the doctors, but we can even use this into mainstream world. So we're going to see a change in the types of projects in our portfolios. There are going to be more agile software rollouts, automation, technology implementation, personalized medicine. Cell and gene therapy is the buzzword out there, and we're going to be seeing a lot of projects in this realm rather than using other microorganisms or other cells from CHO or E. coli. We're going to actually be using patients' own cells and re-entering them into the body with the correct orientation of the way that we want their DNA and everything to be dealing with whatever the medication is that they're going to be receiving. The quality and regulatory projects, authorizing these new technologies to be into our portfolios, validating the automation systems, and of course, data protection. And we're in a really unique time because all of the sciences are coming together right now. And this is a really interesting diagram, I thought, and it comes from MIT. The main thread that's allowing all this to happen is artificial intelligence and sharing of the data and looking at the data, the algorithms that are connecting all these. And they're really seeing that mathematics is what's tying everything together. There's a connection of all life and all the universe, and they're beginning to see these focuses through mathematics. And so how will the execution of our projects be different to make them faster, smarter, easier, more efficient, bridging the decision-making? First, I'm going to start with the physical workplace. And COVID really has revolutionized our work culture over this year. And one of the things is we're living off our laptops. And I think in less than a year, no more than 5 years, you're not going to see physical laptops and physical computers with buttons. Everything is going to be automated. You're going to be able to project your workspace anywhere within the world, whether it's wearing a pair of glasses or having something that's going to project it in front of you. This is stuff that we've seen in Hollywood movies, and the technology is there. It's just bringing it into the mainstream now. In fact, there was in Las Vegas before COVID, they had an electronics exhibition where people were using these Google glasses, and they started coining them as glass holes. And one of the things that these glasses could do is that it would look at somebody's face, and it would go through the LinkedIn database, and it would tell the person everything about that person that they needed to know so they could come up to the person and introduce themselves. And they actually started to outlaw this because people thought it was an invasion of their own privacy. But anyways, this stuff is coming to the market very soon. And a lot more people, now that the culture is that you can have this work-life balance, you're not having to go into an office as much. You'll be able to work with your teammates virtually through these different technologies. These are just some changes on the digital mindset in terms of going from a very hierarchical, structured, formal environment in the workplace to something that's more agile, more based on autonomy and networking and casual spaces. Manufacturing spaces are definitely going to change. Those of you that grew up in my generation learned a lot about Lean and Six Sigma. And what is the best way to get rid of waste than to get rid of equipment that you're only going to use a few times a year, or hiring employees that are only going to be redundant in a few years? The best thing that we can do is think about how we can be more efficient in whether it's using more consulting companies to bring people on board to do projects for a shorter amount of time instead of hiring full-time employees that you're maybe going to get rid of in 5, maybe even less years. The robotics definitely are going to transform the way that our production is being done. In the Tesla factories, everything is done by automation, and they're very much working in these restricted area barrier places, and it's going to create new challenges for us as well, but it's going to make it safer for the people working on the products. It's going to revolutionize our industry in cell and gene therapy, and it's going to make it more accurate and safer for the people in general. And one of the things with the renting of equipment, one of the challenges is, well, how do you validate rented equipment? And the thing is that the validation portion of it, at least for the IQ and the OQ, would be set on the rental company, whereas the performance qualification portion of it would be on the company actually accepting it for their products. And so there is a way that this can all work in a new ballroom style manufacturing facility where you're bringing equipment in only for the campaign that you have for that product. Agile executions, I know a lot of the speakers talked about this, so I won't get into too much information on agile execution of projects, but the one thing I do want to mention is on the teams. And so when you break down that hierarchy and making the teams come together for shorter periods of time, in the software industry, a sprint is usually a matter of weeks. Our projects typically could run anywhere from 3 to 10 years, depending on how long the team is staying with that product through the clinical trials into commercialization. The thing is that when you do a project agilely, you're only looking at how is that team coming together maybe for the next 6 weeks or 6 months. You're not looking out so many years ahead. And so you can better bring teams together where they have the time, they have the energy, and they have the know-how to work together. And now that you have remote working, you can bring people together from different disciplines more easily, and being able to use their knowledge and change team members out. Typically, when you have a company and all of your projects that are in one country are being managed by one team, all the projects in another company are managed by another team, it makes it easier for you to mix and match the different people from your locations together and use them when you need them. So from there, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the behavioral changes that are going to have to happen for us. And so in order for change to happen, it's usually best happening when people are happy, healthy, resilient, when they're safe and they feel that they're secure in their jobs. This past year has put people into a sense of fear, and change has happened for a lot of us, but in this fear space. But really, for change to happen, it's better when people are calmer and they know what the future is going to have in store for them. A few of the things to talk about: the collective intelligence side of things. So you've all heard of artificial intelligence, but there's this thing called CI, collective intelligence, where it's bringing together the information from the different people and the different team players on the project or the product. And sometimes this is a collaboration from the competitors, and we've seen that a lot with COVID, where competitors have actually come together to bring something to the market much quicker. Realigning the different teammates, that the input can be coming from a variety of different people on your teams. It could be subject matter experts. You can bring together former employees, whether they're retired, maybe they've moved on to a new organization and they've learned things from the new organization that can help feed the database. You can bring into play professional organizations like ISPE, university and learning institutions. Pharma Biologics, where I'm working right now, they have a direct link to the university system, and they even use some of the university students after they graduate to come work in their facilities. And so there's this really great relationship between the university and the product, the company itself. But there's a variety of people, even from the outside, your consultants and contractors, that can help feed the system. A behavioral change of keeping your calendar up to date and actually merging your personal calendar. And if you're working on multiple projects, for a lot of the consultants out there, or even if you're working in a corporation, you might have multiple projects that you're working on simultaneously. And so you're going to leave it to the computer to find that time in your schedule to coordinate with your different teams. And you have the ability, you have the control to pick when you want to work, when your family time is, when you want to have your workout time, when you want to have time to do your errands. And the computer will actually find the time where you and your team can best coordinate. And so maybe you have a regular 9 to 5 schedule. It's traditional. Maybe you're a working mom and have to have something that's a little bit more structured for the family. This is something that you will be in control of. Another thing that Amazon Mechanical Turk is taking into play is they're having their team members do psychological questionnaires. And some of our teams at Roche have done this as a team building exercise. Some people think that it's an invasion of their own privacy, and this is always optional. Nobody forces somebody to take a psychological questionnaire. But me personally, I got a lot out of it in terms of the feedback. Gave me some insights into me that I didn't necessarily knew reflected onto others. And it gave me some feedback too in terms of how to deal with difficult personalities, because sometimes there are these personalities that clash, and they give really good advice in terms of how to deal with these different types of mindsets. Another thing too that was interesting on the board of directors for ISP when we did this, the consultant that gave us this test, they put everybody in the team into these different quadrants just so we can see where we all aligned. And what was really great about this team is that we were equally proportionate in the different quadrants. And that is because the teams work best when you have people of these different psychological thinking mindsets. We all are trying to do things in terms of getting diversity on our teams, but we never really think about that mental diversity too. And you never want to have a team with too many leaders. Also, too, you never want to have a team that have too many engineers or science-based thinkers. You need a good balance of everybody. And one of the things that I found interesting is the person that I really didn't get along with the most, when I looked on this thing, our dots were almost next to each other on the quadrants. And so it's realization that sometimes people that are a little bit too much alike maybe will clash as well. When I tried to do this with a team, international team at Salonic, a lot of the people were really interested in taking it, but my German employees were definitely against it. And this comes into the cultural differences in sharing information. And a lot of you know that in China, artificial intelligence is out on the streets. Even if you go to jaywalk or if you do a traffic violation, it will scan your face and you will receive a ticket or your infraction in the mail. In Germany, there's a lot more data protection and privacy laws. And so sharing information is definitely something that is cultural and is going to have to come together over the entire world. There's going to be a new, I believe, a new role in the companies of data cleansers. Data integrity is very important, and as you set up these databases for artificial intelligence, it's a matter of making sure the right data is going into the right places. We've all heard of this notion of garbage in, garbage out. You want your company operating off one set of numbers. You want to be able to merge the data sets, verify the information, validate the information, make sure it's accurate. And it's hard to do that. And so you're going to need people that are just in charge of making sure that the numbers and the data is going to the right places. And you can't compare in a portfolio if you have one project that has all of the fields filled out and you have another portfolio or another project in the portfolio that doesn't have anything in there, or maybe they only have a project description and a little bit of information. That's like comparing apples to oranges, and you really can't prioritize a portfolio that way. And so it'll even give ways that you can fill in missing data with placeholders so that you can accurately look at these projects on an equal playing field. Looking at your company's IT landscape and making sure that different departments aren't trying to put the same information in a different system. And this is something I was working with my current client and trying to make sure that the one set of numbers is fitting into the right software. And we have Microsoft Teams, we have Outlook, we have SharePoint that already are working together. We have TrackWise implementing LIMS and how do they work together. We also have a lot of CDMO and SNOP software, and we need to make sure that everybody is working off one set of numbers. In these Microsoft Teams spaces, and some companies are using Google or other brands, but ultimately you're going to be working on Teams and everything can be tracked into one database. And so this is going to be really great too for tracking actuals, because now that you have Microsoft Teams and everything is probably set up on a background SharePoint system or something equivalent, you're going to be able to track better when you're in each project and how much of your time is actually spent in these team spaces, whether it be on meetings, reviewing documents, setting up Excel spreadsheets for your projects. Also, too, this natural learning processing is going to help people a lot. And I don't know if you know, when you go into your conference calls, at least on Microsoft Teams, you can actually record that entire call and it will do a transcript and translate underneath real time. And right now I'm working in Poland, and so a lot of the people are not English speakers by tongue, and so it's hard to keep up sometimes with the conversations, and they can have it translated into Polish at the bottom, just as if they're watching Netflix at home. And every once in a while the translations are a little off, but every day it's getting more and more accurate, especially too as they know the types of words that you're going to be using. Virtual assistants are going to be out there, and they already are. And if you're not using one already, it's just a matter of time. And maybe you don't even realize that you're using natural language processing. Even when you're using spell checks, when you're using things to read books to you on Audible, this is all part of artificial intelligence, and it's going to be used on a day-to-day basis. You're not going to have to write things down anymore in the future, and it's going to automatically know that, hey, when you booked a flight to the other side of the world, that is automatically going to change your calendar to be operating on that time zone. One thing for me is I have dyslexia, and this natural language processing and even spell check, things of that nature, being able to hear books instead of having to read them myself is really helping me on a day-to-day basis. Not COVID. Excuse me. I'm gonna take a drink here. So this again is just a little bit about the tracking of the projects. Feedback loops, especially when we're working with millennials. it's very important that you're giving feedback as it's happening. So traditionally, we have these PPNRs or some sort of a reporting mechanism where you sit down with your boss every 6 months and you go over how your goals are doing and how you're performing. Well, feedback loop, similar to when you go to a restaurant and you automatically get this email that wants you to rate how your experience was. They're going to want you to be giving feedback on your teams exactly at the time when you're finishing up the project, so that you're not waiting 6 months to get positive feedback, negative feedback, whatever constructive criticism it is. It should be more on a constant basis. Having time for the work-life balance, making sure that you have time to yourself. We don't know what the effects of this technology is going to be in the long run, and so it's very important that companies let employees take time out for themselves. One of the things is, I showed this last year, the evolution of the employee, that they can work anywhere, anytime. They always say that it's good to take a 20-minute break every 2 hours. And now that I'm working from home, it's kind of nice. I have my yoga mat is literally in the next room. This is my living gym, and this is my dining office. But you have that ability to take this time out for yourself and make sure that you get away, that your eyes get a rest, that your back gets a rest. And as I said, with the projected workspaces in the future, hopefully we're not going to be sitting at a desk in this position for too much longer. And corporations are finding, and not so much now with the gyms being closed and employees aren't able to gather together, but pre-COVID, they were finding that these companies that had yoga programs and meditation programs, they found reduced healthcare costs, increased energy, reduced fatigue from just making clerical mistakes. So this is something that preventative medicine and preventative health is going to be really encouraged in the workplace. How are we doing on time? Because I think we got started a little bit late. I want to make sure I'm not going into the networking hour. I might go through some of these slides a little bit quickly.
Kelly, you can take a couple of minutes to wind up. Just take your time. It's okay.
Okay, so this is just about re-engaging people in the organization. One of the things I want to mention here is don't forget younger team members. A lot of times we don't gather feedback from the younger team members on our team because maybe we think they don't have the experience and the know-how really to feed a knowledge management or a collective intelligence database. One of the things I really encourage my clients to do is rebrand knowledge management into this collective intelligence database. But a lot of times the younger members are seeing a lot more things that we might not be seeing from the day-to-day basis. And they look at things from a unique perspective. And so I think it's really important that you include those younger team members into giving feedback and actually feeding into these databases. Some of the databases, that the basic things that you want to include, things on project costs, schedule, deviations, what's the critical path, where was the site or the product produced or located, what are some pragmatic elements of the project, what was the molecular entity, active ingredients, things that could be compared to the other projects. What were your major change orders? Were there any lessons learned, a root cause analysis on something drastic that might occur? The kappas, things of that nature from your TrackWise system can be fed into this system. Team member contact details in case you need to talk to them in the future, because you might have a project that comes up 3 years from now that's very similar. This will all help better estimations, it'll help better scheduling and making sure that you're putting together information that's going to be better for understanding what the project is going to take in terms of time, resources, and money. Risk is something else. We constantly need to rebalance our priorities. We need to be transparent. We need to make sure that these projects are something that we want to invest in. And one of the things that we're going to be looking at is the different types of ways that AI can help in these risk analysis. What we're finding, and this is already in the financial realm, that the computers are already outperforming the portfolio managers from a finance point of view. With a regression study, you can look at the NPVs to predict the final cost of a project based on a list of variables, including the cost of similar projects, the team size, time constraints, resource allocation, and tracking actuals. You can look at the clustering of the information. This is similar to what Netflix does when you look at different programs. It's like, okay, well, these are very similar. Since you looked at this project, you might also be interested in looking at these other projects that had very similar entities. Monte Carlo simulations are used very often in our construction projects, and basically it takes your risk analysis and the probabilities of those risks happening, and it takes through the computer model everything that could possibly happen, all the variations of what's the probability of them all happening at the same time, and it can give you a printout in terms of what you should put on your project for a contingency, both cost and schedule-wise. They're already using this in science, finance, design, engineering, climate change, law, just about any statistic you can measure, you can do a Monte Carlo simulation on it. And the main thing with risk reviews, get the whole team together at every major phase gate, make it a discussion, make it an open and honest area where people can bring in things that even if you don't think it's going to be a big problem, just being able to mitigate and making sure that, hey, if this does happen, we're going to be ready to attack it. And life cycle costs. The last thing here is a lot of times these databases can help be fed to understand what that cost is over the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, the technology costs, if you have licensing charges that have to go into it. Also, too, there's a lot of information from GAMP that can come into the system development life cycle. And I'm going to go through this really quick. I'm going to skip that. Virtual teamwork, uses of natural process. I just want to talk about this thing called Mechanical Turk, because a lot of you might not know about it, and it's soon going to be coming to our corporations, but it's already being used at Amazon, and one of the reasons why Amazon is one of the most profitable companies in the world is that they're breaking down their teams and their projects into very small pieces, and they're putting it out there for basically a tender. And Mechanical Turk is the way that they do their micro tasks, and they put something out there. It doesn't matter how long, or I guess I should put it, they put out, this is what needs to be done. People bid on doing that piece of the work, and it doesn't matter if it takes them 5 days or 5 weeks. There'll definitely be a due date, but they're going to get paid the same no matter what. And so it's a different way of contracting where you're actually opening up a platform where people can come from the outside. Of course, they have to have the right qualifications and training and probably have some special things on file with the company. But it's actually something that you can pull from this database of people to work on the teams. It optimizes the efficiency, increases the flexibility of the workforce, and it significantly reduces the cost because they're breaking down things into micro tasks instead of hiring people to do projects for a 2 to 3 year period. And then also too, they're doing this for business processing, outsourcing, and crowdsourcing, making organizations more efficient by distributing the work among a lot of different users and a lot of different people, developers or people that can help in the process. This I'm skipping over. It's about protecting your data and the risks of hijacking. Everything today is in the clouds, and we need to be able to trust our systems. And so this is something that's a very big data security implication. But I just want to say there are 2 books here that I would highly recommend for people that are interested in this artificial intelligence and networking and all the things that come around this topic. Both of these authors are MIT professors. Max Tegmark works alongside Elon Musk in trying to make AI security better in the future. And so he has a really interesting portion of this book, Life 3.0, where he actually shows how AI can actually solve world peace, and he goes through it step by step. I think every movie and everything we hear in the media is about it's going to be a dystopian society if the computers take over the world. But he really takes it in a way that it shows that if you bring everybody together and you collectively try to solve problems, that it can actually go towards world peace. The other one, Superminds, is more about the networking and how you can bring the collective intelligence into things. So last, in order to stay relevant, for us, the computers aren't going to take away our jobs. We need to really stay relevant in our leadership skills, people and stakeholder management, communication, both verbal and nonverbal, storytelling, empathy, our own emotional intelligence, how to negotiate. A computer can't negotiate yet, and foreseeing the risks that computers cannot see. So with that, hopefully I didn't go too far over the time slot, but I don't know if we're doing questions a little bit later, I think after the break, but I want to thank you all for it.
Thank you, Kelly, for this wonderful, wonderful presentation. I really, really like your idea that that you can travel with a purpose and not just travel for the sake of travel. I also liked that you said that AI is not lack of human intelligence, and it can be the connecting thread between all the sciences. I also liked the way you showed that we need the evolution from hierarchy to agile, and that today all the changes that they are taking place, it's more in a fear space, and it could be also better to have these changes in a positive space. And I definitely agree. We should encourage use of psychological questionnaires, and they can help to manage difficult personalities. We need to look for data cleansers in organizations. I know I'm suffering every time. I don't know how much of data we have, and which is, I know that they don't serve any purpose, but we have to keep it for some regulatory purpose. But I'm sure we need some professional, because we are all busy and nobody looks at that data. And I like the idea that feedback loops and how feedback is important for millennials. That's absolutely wonderful idea, and that the companies who are having yoga or health programs, they are having less medical costs and more productive, and we can use clustering or algorithms in our organization. So thank you so much. We have two quick questions, so I think if you can, I think you can respond them very quick. So one is from our friend Mikael. He's saying that, do you agree that we need some sort of oversight so society maintains control over AI initiatives that are currently primarily happening in the private sector, similar to FDA or other agencies?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's exactly what Max Tegmark talks about in his book, Life 3.0. And one of the things, if you think about it, in history, an architect, for me, I had to go through, gosh, I think 10 tests in order to get an architectural license so that any building that I designed would not kill people. Engineers have to go through these tests. Doctors have to go through these tests. Lawmakers have to go through these tests. But in the computer world, nobody has to take an examination to be a computer developer. And that's something that's really missing in this world. And that's probably coming into play in the next, I'd say, 5 to 10 years, is that people are going to have to pass a certain amount of tests. And a lot of these tests are based on ethics in terms of what you do with the knowledge that you know and how you apply it to social cases, and how you use it in your day-to-day work and the impact it has on society.
Great, thank you. And Beat has a question. AI can speed up processes a great deal. How can we ensure that natural intelligence can keep up?
That they can keep up. Well, I think a lot of people, they collect all this data and they just don't know what to do with it. And I think at this point, that's okay. Right now, I think all these companies are collecting data and don't know what to do with it. But what the difference is with machine learning is the machines are learning how to go through that data and find algorithms where the data crosses over and where it's similar and where things can work together. And so I think we're not there yet in terms of knowing what to do with all this data we have, but I think we're very close. And again, I think in the next 5 years, there are going to be programs. And I even think about just when I'm looking for a file. I mean, there were times where when I couldn't remember where I filed something, it was lost until, sometimes I just forgot about it and never found it. But now with these simple search buttons that are in our file sharers, it'll go through entire documents looking for that word or a segment of words. And one of the things is trying to teach people how to use metadata when they're putting things into these databases or filing systems. So I think that's very important as well. But machine learning, I wouldn't say that machine learning isn't keeping up. I would say it's more that we can't keep up with feeding it the right data.
Absolutely agree. And I can also add that, we are not always aware that we have several different kinds of intelligences. Some agree it's between 9 and 12. So I would recommend you this book by Gardner. It's from 1983. It's called Frames of Mind, The Theory of Multiple Intelligences, which suggests that we have many different kinds of intelligences. So we will always be intelligent no matter what. So thanks, Kelly, for this wonderful presentation. And let's go for the break, and we meet exactly in at 11. So in the meantime, you can use the networking option to meet new people, discuss, and you can also, and there will be a little message on the platform, PPM workout, where all these recordings of the sessions will be available. So I would give the stage to Simona, who will tell you something more about it.
Thank you for the word, and thank you, Kelly, for an amazing presentation. I enjoyed it on so many levels, both about the information and the visual. Thank you so much for those insights. And I'd like to point out that Kelly is our top speaker and also our trainer who's holding a masterclass in May, I suppose. Is that right, Kelly?
Yes.
Perfect. So if you've got any questions or you'd like to dive deeper into Kelly's expertise and learn something new, you can find out more information about the masterclass held by Kelly in the expo area, where my colleague will answer all your questions and you can even get the discount. So make sure to go and check it out. There are also other masterclasses, and in the expo you can find information on the PPM workout, which is our community platform. We are going to be publishing all the recordings and also the presentations or slide decks of the speakers from the conferences that we held, provided that the speakers will allow publishing. So those are just very brief information about the expo area, but during this break, you can also visit sessions. If you've got any more questions, I'm also inviting Kelly or any other speaker from today to just jump into the breakout room called post-session Q&A, where you can share the screen and have an open discussion and roundtable around the topic that you're curious about, that there was no space to discuss during the presentation. So whoever feels called to, there is this breakout room for that. There are also other topics, whether it's decision-making, leadership, innovation, digitalization. So make sure to check it out. And the last option for those breaks is to have networking. It's like speed dating, where you get randomly connected to another attendee of this conference, and you have 20 to 180 seconds to introduce yourself. So that's it from me for now, but I'll be back during lunchtime, where I can get a brief demonstration of the PPM workout platform later on. So that's it from me. Thank you so much. I guess we're going to be having panel discussion in 15 minutes. So looking forward to having you there, and yeah, just go and explore this platform. So.
So should I just stay backstage for the panel?